Good morning, Chris Render, my college success coach, coming to you live and direct from the Mobile Success Lab today. Today we're broadcasting from John Render Esquire's office in beautiful downtown Salisbury, Maryland. And if you are in need of any legal services, he's your man. Tell him that my college success coach sent you, and I'm sure he'll take good care of you. All right, today I have the pleasure of speaking with Ryan Ingram about personal finance and investing for students and parents. And in addition to being one of really the most quality humans that I know, Ryan is the president of Ingram Insurance. He is a real estate investor, and he is a self-made millionaire in the mold of Dr. Stanley's best-selling book, The Millionaire Next Door. And more importantly than all that, Ryan is a devoted father to 3 children, with 1 on the way, so soon be a devoted father of 4. He is a loving husband, and he truly has a heart to educate and mentor our emerging generation with his wisdom and lessons learned around building wealth. And so rarely are you going to find someone with so much to offer who is asking for so little in return. And as you'll soon see, Ryan's not selling any books, even though he is an accomplished author. He's not selling any courses. He simply desires to give back and to help others. And he often says that we live in the best of all possible times to be alive, in the greatest of all possible countries, and we have endless opportunity. So, Ryan, I'm excited to have you here today, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thanks. That was quite the introduction. I'm happy to be here.
Man, I've been looking forward to this for a while. On a personal level, I really enjoy our conversations, and I'm excited for you to get the word out to my audience, because I think it's going to be super valuable. So if you're willing to, tell us a little bit about yourself and just give like a 10,000-foot view of your professional and your personal journey so far.
Okay. Well, I think to start, my wife and I, all of this really started whenever my wife and I had our first kid. So, you mentioned that I have 3 and 1 on the way, and we've been cranking out babies. We've been going 1 for 1 for the past 4 years. So there's no duplicates or repeats. My oldest is 3. He'll be 4 in January. So for a little bit, we're going to have 4 under 4. And,
Wow.
I was in law enforcement. I actually used the police academy as elective credits to finish out my undergraduate. I had this little tiny point where I almost got expelled from the college that I was going to. I went to Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, and I turned 21 and started drinking some alcohol. But unfortunately, I had signed a sheet of paper that was like a covenant that said I wouldn't drink the entire time I was there. So I was in the wrong. But nonetheless, because my undergraduate degree was in biblical languages, really no other college offered that. So had I been expelled, it would have set me back to be like a freshman. So I just wanted to stay out of sight, out of mind. So I went to the dean of students, and we, agreed that the police academy would be sufficient amounts of credits in order to finish that off. So halfway through the police academy, I realized that, it would be pretty fun to be in law enforcement. And that's ultimately where I met my wife. She was an assistant principal at a school that was in the area. And that's exactly the kind of life that we were living up until we had our son. And at that point, we realized it was really important for us that she be a stay-at-home mom. Now, I had always been frugal. I read The Automatic Millionaire by David Bach at a really young age. So, in that book, he really just teaches that you should have it set up automatically, all of your savings. So I was saving 50 to 60% of my income, but we had built this lifestyle. We had 17 acres and we built a house. So I wouldn't be able to provide that kind of lifestyle for my family while also continuing to save. So we would have had to go on this like paycheck to paycheck type way of living in order to make that happen. So I've kind of always considered myself to be a high achieving individual. And in that time, I got really perplexed. I questioned like my masculinity and manhood because I wasn't able to provide that kind of lifestyle for my family that we were both after. So, at the time, I think this was right around when Ty Lopez was really big, and he had that Lamborghini or whatever in his garage with all the books. Like, it gets made fun of a lot now, but at the moment, I was like, man, this guy is saying that all the answers are in the book. So I actually set out to read 1 book per day until I figured out how to fix the situation. Because, I realized that all of my energy were going into things that weren't related or revolving around financials or success that has any correlation with anything monetary. So that's ultimately what started me on this path. And that was like, I guess I left law enforcement in April of 17. So not long ago.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, it
Yep.
hasn't
So
been.
now, like you mentioned, I've got the insurance agency, which you made it sound way cooler than it actually is. It's just me in this office selling insurance. I've got one virtual assistant that's super helpful. And then my brother and I are business partners on the real estate investing side. And at the moment, we have 64 properties with a few more under contract.
Wow. Okay. Well, modesty is one of your attributes for sure. And I know you say it's just you and the virtual assistant, but you have a strong book of business. And I think most people would be satisfied with the situation that you're in, even outside of the real estate investing. So I think that, I know you were going to sell yourself short, but it's somewhere between the two of us. How about that? But let me ask you a quick question in regards to what you just said. You said you read a book a day.
Yes.
And I'm assuming it wasn't Dr. Seuss that you're reading. So please elaborate a little bit on how one goes about reading a book a day. What kind of books were you reading? Just send a little bit about that process.
Yep. So when I was in law enforcement, my goal there was to eventually be a chief. So here now it's pretty common for chiefs to have master's degrees and PhDs and whatnot. So law enforcement is very much one of those kind of there's like a hierarchy where seniority plays a big role. So I was just trying to check the boxes while I was putting in the time. And, I had a master's degree. I finished it when I was in law enforcement. And then I started a PhD. I think they call it like all but dissertation. So I was already doing a substantial amount of like academic work. And, one of the things that I realized in that is, a lot of the professors that I was learning from, especially at the PhD level, like, yes, they were very accomplished in academia, but all that we did, because my PhD was in organizational leadership, and those books revolved around underperforming companies and how, CEOs or new hires came in and completely changed the culture, improved the finances and whatnot. And I realized that none of those CEOs that we were reading about had the like this PhD in organizational leadership that I was after. So that first opened up my eyes. And, in those books that we were reading, there were recommendations and commonly referenced books that are just classics. So, a few that have been most impactful to me are, and if you read like a lot of the self-improvement or self-help or personal finance books, then pretty much all of them link back to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, The Magic of Thinking Big, The Richest Man in Babylon. Oh, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yeah. So I would say start with those, and then the Tony Robbins, the people that are just blowing up your Facebook feed with advertisements, the ones that give you free ebooks. I read a lot of those, and again, just because the way people cite things, it all kind of leads back. So one book led to another, that led to another, and one book per day, yes. But I was also this might be unbecoming, but once I made the decision that I needed to fix this, then I kind of stopped doing anything proactive in law enforcement. And, I would tuck my police car into, one of those places on the side of the street where they sold sheds. I would nestle up between one of those and just read a book while I was working.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's interesting, because you're talking about a combination of business books, mindset books, personal growth. So most people struggle with change. I mean, especially major change. What enabled you to make the transition from police to entrepreneur? I mean, it sounds like you were not just, I mean, if you're going through and looking at a PhD program and you're wanting to be chief, then you were on that track. And up until you were parking behind the shed, you were giving it your all. So what enabled you to do like a 180 where most people like we think about it, talk about it, but never actually even begin to take that first step?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And I would say, I think the fundamental part of this is that like when I was 17 or 18, I got a hold of that Automatic Millionaire by David Bach, who talked about, taking the decision at hand. So as soon as I got hired in the full-time job, I could live off of one paycheck, because at the time I was still in college. I was living in like a garage, an apartment above a garage for like $400 a month. So all of my living expenses could be paid for by 1 month. So I was ecstatic when I got that first paycheck, and then I was completely confused about what to do with the second one whenever that one showed up. So immediately I started saving half of my income. And, each time I got a raise, because again, it was law enforcement, it was a government job, it was very structured, you get annual pay raises. I would take the first paycheck, whatever the difference was between what I was getting, I would buy myself something fun, and then I would immediately increase the contributions to savings accounts and retirement accounts, so that I never actually like gave myself a pay raise. So I started at 33,000 a year, I believe, and then when I left, I think I was making somewhere around the 44,000 range. So in that time, I think we saved somewhere around 60 grand that were in my accounts. So,
Wow.
we had a solid foundation of money that we could fall down on if we needed to. But nonetheless, leaving law enforcement is absolutely one of the hardest things that I've ever done, because as you're familiar with government jobs or large corporate jobs, there's a lot of very cushy benefits. So I would be walking away from the health insurance, the 401k, the pension, and all of that. So a lot of math was involved in this, and just kind of doing that like reverse engineering thing. It's like, okay, well, if I do walk away from these things, how much money do I need to be able to produce now in order to make up for that? So I'm a big fan of stoicism. I highly recommend that people at least look into that. And one of the big pillars of stoicism is go ahead and spend time on just mentally envisioning the worst of all possible scenarios that could possibly happen, and then make peace with that. So yes, I left law enforcement, but at the same time, this was around like the first run of the Black Lives Matter thing with like the Ferguson and all of that. So nobody was really being like, there was a lot of vacancies in police departments just nationwide. So I figured, worst case scenario, I had an awesome resume for law enforcement. And that is one of the key things that allowed me to kind of step out. Was I had like a 6-month runway where, I could experiment and not take a giant financial hit if I was able to produce zero income while I was out there. And then the second thing is, at the time I was 27. So since youth was on my side, I had, decades to make up for this horrible decision should anything have gone wrong.
So when you made this decision, what did the
Mhm.
people around you, what was their response? Because I want to come back and talk about saving half your income and
Mhm.
doing that from the jump, which is pretty amazing. I think that we can talk about that in regards to students here shortly. But when you decided to leave law enforcement, now at that time, I remember well that yes, it was certainly not cool to be a police officer, and like you said, it gave you the opportunity to leave and come back. But were your colleagues supportive? Was your wife supportive? Other people in your life? How did that work?
Um, so I talk a good bit about this, and this is one thing that I try really hard not to come across offensive as, but like your network, you have your immediate network. So everybody, especially, any sort of subculture is really bad about hanging out with people that are exactly, of the same mindset as them. So my cop friends were phenomenal at supporting me through like the mental aspects of law enforcement. And they were phenomenal in helping me figure out how to be the best cop that I possibly could be. But when you're talking about leaving law enforcement and like dipping my toes into like capitalism or corporate America, then they themselves haven't done that. So you kind of have to filter what type of advice you take from the people around you. So one of the captains at the department that was a mentor of mine in law enforcement, he urged me heavily not to. He wanted me to stay on the course. He was trying to encourage me to, go through with a PhD so that ultimately I could become chief. And he had, it all mapped out and showed me all the math behind. I'd be able to like retire at 48 with like a 6-figure income for the rest of my life. But at the same time, I had to be miserable for the next 21 years in order to achieve
Wow.
that. So it was some things that I had to weigh.
It's interesting you bring that up. That's a conversation that I have a lot with teenagers or people in the early 20s as they're making that transition from their high school to college, or even from college to career, anywhere in that age range, where, especially if they've lived in the same place their whole lives, they have their friends. And when we talk about, okay, what makes a friend? How do I make new friends? How do I bring people into my circle? And a lot of times they're starting from a point where they don't know. I sat next to Jenny in second grade homeroom. So we're best friends because we've known each other for 15 years. And
Mhm.
so that can be hard as you grow and you become more self-aware and realize, okay, Jenny no longer is somebody that's helping me to grow. She's keeping me where I am. So taking what you just said in regards to your immediate circle of friends and those that you rely on, and I kind of knew you were going to go that way because I know you well enough to to be steering this. But what advice, or how would you explain that to an 18-year-old who maybe has 3 or 4 friends that's been their circle of friends for the past 10 years, and now they're going out and exploring new things? What's the best way to go about finding people that are going to kind of pour into your life and make you better, rather than, like, you've used the example of crabs in the pot, and I'm here on the eastern shore of Maryland where crabs are prevalent, and we use that example a lot. I think that it's perfect. Like, what would you say to an 18-year-old that was coming to you for that advice on how to bring new people into their life?
Okay, so first, I've never actually seen that, so that does happen. The
Oh yeah,
crabs in the
yeah,
bucket.
it does, especially if you're
Okay,
putting them in a pot to then steam them, and one's smart enough to try to get out, they're bringing them back in for sure. Yeah. So that's an
gotcha.
accurate analogy, accurate
Um,
illustration.
yes, I was going out on a limb. I'd never seen it, but I was hoping it was true. So relationships are hands down like the most important thing in all of life. And you really want to guard all of the people that you have relationships with. You never want money or business or any of these things to wreck a relationship. And you never want to, cut off somebody that has been a phenomenal friend to you for 10, 15, 20 years, however long that is. But at the same time, if you are sensing that you want something more from your life, and you look around at your immediate circle of friends and realize that none of your friends have what you are looking for in your life, then you can still have fun with them. You could still spend time with them, but you really need to just build yourself a wall about what aspect that you are going to allow those people to speak into your life on. And, I keep in touch with, friends from just all walks of my life. I don't think I keep in touch with anyone from elementary school, but middle school, high school for sure, college. And no, they are not on the same path as I am. But at the same time, they played a phenomenal role in my life. I will always love them and respect them. And if they ever reach out to me for anything, I will do my best to do all that I can to help them with whatever it is. But at the same time, if you are actively striving, to kind of level up in life, then you're not going to want to listen to them. You're going to want them to be encouraging. And if someone in your circle is doing that, you're just back to the crab analogy. You're not going to want to pull them down. You're going to want to help them achieve whatever it is. And I think that is, counterintuitive to how we're hardwired, because, in our minds, since the unknown is out there and scary, then you're going to want to pull them back in, just like the crabs. But at the same time, when you are so young, you have this giant buffer to make very large mistakes and still be okay 40, 50 years down the road from now. So I think the biggest thing is to identify, let's say, because of just like the marketing material and the introduction of the self-made millionaire, like, let's say, becoming a millionaire is your goal, then you're going to want to pay close attention to who you're spending your time with. You're going to want to go through your phone. If you don't have any millionaires in your phone, then, that's a good indication that it's an uphill battle for you. So one of the things that I do is I constantly monitor, like, who were my last 10 calls, and, what percentage of those were millionaires or on the path to be a millionaire. And you always, of course, there's wiggle room in that, like 7 out of 10 is good, 6 out of 10 is good, but you just want to be mindful of all of the interactions that you have in a daily basis, who you're letting speak into your life. Like, my wife and I, we don't have a television. I deleted the news app just because I'm doing tons of self-reflection. Like, you have so much energy that you could possibly put out in one day. And what are the things that are detracting that are pulling you down? And quite frankly, all of the things in the news and media, while they're important, while you should keep a thumb on them, at the same time, constantly updating yourself and having that negative energy in your life isn't going to do anything but slow you down between you and your goals. Sorry that was so
Yeah.
long-winded, but there's
No,
a
no,
lot. That was a big question.
yeah, it was. That was a great answer. And when you're talking about the last 10 people that were in your phone, when we're talking about that, the generation that, like, there's an age gap between you and I, and then there's an age gap between you and students right now. I mean, you're looking at that 10 years from somebody that's graduating from high school right now from you. In that 10 years, it's just exponentially more as far as the number of people, the access they have into an average student's life generally through social media. And so they have a lot of people that they don't even know that can speak positively or negatively. And it causes them that they reflect on what other people are saying, both positively and negatively, for that that self-assurance, that self-confidence. And 90% of the time, it's people that are not real in their lives too. So another battle is being able to kind of have a force field up to protect yourself from those people, so that even if they're saying great things, whether it's positive or negative, that can't be what you base your actions on, and it can't be what you base your self-confidence and your self-image on, because that's not self, right? So with that in mind, and you have an impressionable 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old who's getting things from all directions, what financial advice would you give to someone in that age bracket who's coming out of high school or coming out of college and beginning their career? Like, what are the one or two most important things that you would say they should be doing? Because I want to hear, well, no, let me just ask that question. I'm getting ahead of myself. Go.
Okay. So I would say the most important thing probably is just to get a firm mental understanding and really allow the understanding and the facts. And if you don't understand what I'm about to say, then please research it and think about it until you agree with me. But that is that you in your teens, early 20s, you are in the highest income earning years of your life. And what I mean by that is if you have a $10 per hour job, there's this really easy formula. It's how to calculate the future value of a dollar. I've done this several times in some videos, but I know that if you invest money at 8%, which is, kind of run of the mill, you could probably do better if you're willing to put energy into it. If you invest $1 at 8% for 30 years, then it's going to be 10.02. So for each dollar you earn 30 years from now, for your future self, that's going to be $10.02. So if you're earning, $10 an hour, now all of a sudden in 30 years from now, that's going to be $100 for you, or $102. So you really want to kind of guard, protect these next few years of your life, because let's say you get a job that is $15, $20 an hour. Well, now that $20 an hour, you can fully embody that and capture that and turn that into $200 for your future self. And in my scenario, like I've just been transparent with you guys, is I had $60,000 whenever I made this giant career switch, which has paid off, hundredfold more than I expected in a very short amount of time. But I never would have been able to take advantage of that opportunity had I not had that strong financial base from just making good decisions and, treating money appropriately.
Wow. So that certainly is a whole different way of thinking about money. And I'm sure that it makes the decision to buy things, especially frivolously, when you're talking about wasting 10x whatever you just spent to get that item that you may or may not have days, months, weeks from then. So
absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest revelations that I had when I first, started thinking that way was, convenience stores. Man, they're a killer. You spend $4 or $5 on like a soda and some snacks, and now you're robbing yourself of 50, 60 future dollars.
Yeah.
So was it worth $50 or $60? Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. I guess the same could be said. I mean, there's the idea of I forget, is the latte tax? Is that what it's called?
The latte factor. Yep.
Latte factor. Yeah, it's kind of same kind of thing. So, all right. So with that in mind, a problem or a situation that I run into a lot is students that are looking at colleges and they don't necessarily have a great idea of what they're going to study, or they're going to do something admirable that's like be a teacher or a social worker or somewhere in those kind of social services realm, where it most likely going to get a state type job, like you were talking about, being a police officer. And so their income is going to be capped. It's a wonderful occupation. They're giving back to society, all the things, but realistically, there is going to be a salary cap there.
Mm-hmm.
With that in mind, the student is dead set on going to a private liberal arts school somewhere that's going to cost, let's say, 20 times what it would cost to go to their state school, or way more than that if they were starting community college. And when we talk about money, that doesn't necessarily resonate with them, because they have the feeling of, oh, I want to be there. So with what you just said in mind, and this is talking to the parents too, because if we're talking about 10x, and that's huge, and looking at a teacher salary after they come out of school, it honestly could take them 20 years to pay off their student loans to even get back to square one. Mm-hmm. So more about that same idea with the 10x, and what advice, or how would you talk to a parent or a student who's in that situation where they really want to go to a certain school, but the long-term outcome for that from a financial standpoint, from a career standpoint. It just doesn't make dollars and cents, so to speak.
Mm. Um, so this is another. Oh, can you hear me okay? I just got a message that said my internet connection is unstable.
Okay, you were dragging just a little. Yeah, just start over if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal question, and that is probably going to be a longer answer for mine as well. And the first thing I would want to say is all of that makes sense. And one of the things that I really picked up in law enforcement is, either good or bad, like either good decision or bad decision. It didn't necessarily start right then. Like a lot of times when I was in law enforcement, I would come across somebody that needed to be arrested, and the decision that they made that led to their arrest was not their first bad decision of that day. You could trace it back probably 7 bad decisions before that. And, I'm not saying that the segue here is going to take a little bit of time. And then also to say that, one of my best friends is in law enforcement. He's always going to be a cop. That is how he is living out his life's purpose. And, he is capable of doing so much more than that. And he could truly excel at anything that he wants to. He's just wired that kind of way, but he is just dead set. Being in law enforcement, despite the lower income, is exactly what he wants to do. And he is one of the few people that I can confidently say the world is truly a better place and a safer place just because he exists. So if you have this thing inside of your heart where it does not make sense financially, there is a salary cap to it. That should not be a deterrent for you to walk out that kind of life. I think that is admirable. I think the world most certainly needs that in order to function appropriately. However, I would also say that what you're saying makes perfect sense, because if your network is all of the people that you've been forced to go to school with, you're completely consumed the majority of your day inside the education system, then you're trying to work out your identity as you view yourself as being above average or the best. And consequently, you want to work your identity out and be consistent in who you are by your choice of school. So it might not make financial sense, but now we're not even talking about finances at this point, because that person is trying to be consistent with who they view themselves to be by what school they want to go to. And I think that is not just true for college, but I think that is true for the majority of financial decisions that people make, because the majority of financial decisions that most of America makes are poor decisions because they're emotional, because they're trying to work out this identity. So buying a new car is, by and large, you could do the numbers pretty quickly. It's a horrible decision, but people view themselves as, a certain way that would be most accurately reflected in that awesome car. So wrestling with your identity and trying to work out who you are as a person and how you want to contribute to society. Like the majority of people that I've met that want to go into social work, if you work that back, 7 steps or so, what you're really saying is you want to be a net positive on the universe. And with all of the things that you have in front of you, all of the things that you've learned inside the school system, all of the things that your network supports and kind of encourages amongst each other, is here are the career paths that you have to choose from if you want to be a net positive on the world. But, think about Amazon. Yes, they are a corporation, but think about how large of an impact that they have had on all of America. And that is not the most consistent or perfect analogy to make, but, shipping times, we used to wait weeks, and now we're frustrated if it takes more than 2 days, right?
Right.
So you can have all sorts of impact on the world without the help of the broken systems that are currently in place. And, I tried to go into the military when I was 18, and my brother, was already through the Naval Academy. And one of the things that he told me is, if you truly are looking to help, then there are a lot of ways that you can make a much larger impact apart from joining the military, because 98% of what I do on a daily basis is not serving the country. No disrespect to anybody that has spent their life in the military. It is most certainly a needed thing. But, if you work back to trying to silence as much of you as of yourself, trying to work out that identity in external things, like where you went to school or what kind of car you drive or what profession you're going to choose, and try just to bring that part of yourself to all aspects of your life. You don't have to make horrible financial systems to be respected or to be viewed appropriately or as you see yourself, for others to see you that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's, I mean, and that's kind of the deeper part of it, where just talking dollars and cents on the surface is not going to resonate, but getting into the identity piece is so huge. And I think that's where, well, most of us, even as adults and certainly as students, don't delve that deep, because we just kind of we know how we feel about something, and then we work to try to bring the support to justify that feeling. So that's great. So I'm going to ask. There's a couple of questions that were asked from students when they found out that I was going to be talking with you. Something
For
that
sure.
came up with a few different ones in regards to your YouTube channel. So you've recently created a YouTube channel, and just within a couple of months, you've posted somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 videos, and you have over 1,200 subscribers right now. And so these students are, a lot of them have been posting for years, and outside of immediate family and maybe a couple of friends that leave, nasty comments, they don't have very many subscribers. So they kind of they one student recently actually watched your whole Millionaire by 30 series. A couple of them have watched different videos of yours. And so they want to know, one, how did you come up with your millionaire framework? And then I guess what they really want to know is, what advice would you give to a high school or college student who's interested in starting or really building their YouTube channel, but struggling to create any content?
Well, those are two completely different questions.
I lumped them all together though, so
Yeah. Uh,
you got to answer.
so the second question was how to build a YouTube channel.
They want to know, all right, so how do they come up with, they're struggling to create content. So they see somebody like you and they're like, this guy knows everything, and he did this and he did that, because you have a pretty broad, you're talking about insurance, you're talking about business loans, you're talking about real estate, you're talking about personal finance, you're talking about mindset. So they want to know, all right, how did he come up with how do I come up with content? And I think you've answered it a little bit in the fact of your life experiences, your reading a book a day, that kind of stuff. But is there a way that you would, I guess, what advice would you give them as far as just like where's the jumping off point for them?
So I think what I've learned about YouTube in this very short amount of time is there's all of the things that I want to talk about, like the Millionaire by 30 series. And, I kind of in preparation and in talking to you over the past, few weeks, that I also put together that tiny little series of things that I would want all students to know, or at least think about if they're looking to become greater than they currently are. So those are the things that I want to talk about that have very little chance of being picked up by the YouTube algorithm. And, there are a lot of tools out there. I think before I started my YouTube channel, I have a tendency, like you just mentioned, reading the one book per day. Similarly, once I see that there's something that I want to start or accomplish or get involved in, then I do my best to research it as in depth and as quickly as I possibly can. So, I've read 2 books on how to grow your YouTube channel. I have listened to hundreds of hours of, other YouTube videos from creators that all they talk about is how to grow a successful YouTube channel. So if you are really interested in growing your YouTube channel quickly, then it has nothing to do with what it is that you want to talk about. It has everything to do with what are people going into YouTube and typing in, because that is where you're going to get picked up by the algorithm. YouTube is going to put your videos in front of the people that are typing those things in. Granted, when you first start, you might be on the 4th, 5th, or 6th page, but if you keep putting out content about one topic in particular, then eventually you're going to start ranking your videos, and then all of the people that type those things in will see your videos first. So I'm not doing the greatest of jobs at that, because I'm not necessarily looking to get a giant YouTube audience. I'm looking to speak everything that I know and that I've learned over the past 3 years into the people that were the person that I was when I was sitting in that cop car, completely confused as to how I was going to provide the appropriate lifestyle for my family. So all of the books that I've read, which I think are somewhere in the 400 to 500 range at the moment, I'm just trying to kind of compact and put out this usable, easily digestible, and quickly actionable framework that people can just immediately start without the burden of reading so many books.
All right. That's awesome. So one, I'm hearing there is no quick hack to growing your YouTube channel. Put in some work. Is that accurate?
I would say that, and then I would get rid of the YouTube channel part and just say that that's true in all of life.
Amen. Yeah, that's awesome. So, all right. Well, I've taken up a lot of. I've gone 10 minutes over from what I told you, but I do want to finish with kind of one more statement question, because you just alluded to the video series that you created that kind of, it's targeting students and it's focused on financial freedom and refining your skills and surrounding yourself with quality people. So, as we go out here, can you just talk a little bit about what inspires you to create and then give away such great content, and to talk to that person you were 3 short years ago? And even, I guess, let's delve in a little bit to the role that your faith plays in your desire to help others too, because there's a lot of people that arguably not even in your like stratosphere, they're not as successful as you, and they are certainly trying to monetize every bit and nugget of wisdom that they have, where you are kind of going the other direction, where it almost seems like, all right, so what's the catch? You're waiting till the end, even though you said you're not selling anything. What are you really selling? And I can tell you, I've watched a lot of those 55 videos, and you're not selling anything. So just talk to us about what inspires you to do that.
Well, my overarching why is kind of like what you alluded to earlier, in the fact that, we are in the information age. There's so much incredible content. If there's anything that you want to learn about with a quick Google or YouTube search, you can find a multitude of videos that are along the same basis. Like a few of my largest mentors, two of which, Warren Buffett, of course, and then Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn in particular, he passed a while ago. He's been dead for a good bit, but nonetheless, like the cool thing about wisdom is you can go all the way back to biblical times, and the wisdom there in the Proverbs. Like, I don't necessarily care about your religion. Like, regardless of where you're at in life, you should read the book of Proverbs, simply because all of the things written so long ago are still true today. So wisdom is no different. All of the things that I'm saying are true now. They were true then, and they're going to be true for, infinitely into the future. So that is what really motivates me. Jim Rohn, has had a giant impact, and all of the things that he says are very similar to the things that are found in the Bible. And I'm looking at this point just to make a really large impact. I don't want to get political. I don't want to talk about current events, but I am a firm believer that we live in the best of all possible times. Yet there is this just giant force to be reckoned with, of all of these people telling us how horrible and how there isn't an equal playing field, how unfair things are. And it just couldn't be further from the truth. So, let's say that were true, right? Like, I like to kind of correlate this to weight, because at one point, if you're an American, at some point, you've probably struggled with weight, either too much of it or too little of it, right? So we know, by and large, that if you are not where you want to be weight-wise, and you are shoving your face with, treats and fast food and all of that, then you can't necessarily be angry about your weight, because you are always doing the right thing. Similarly, if we do live in the best of all possible times, but people are telling us that we are not, then how do you prove that we are? By, drastically, back to the overweight thing. If you exercise and eat right and constantly think on the things that are good, that make for someone that is in good shape, then that is ultimately what I'm trying to do. Is, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first one is yourself. You have to be able to take care of yourself. You have to be able to, I have to have clothes, I have to eat, I have to do all of these things. All of my personal needs are met. Then you go up to the next one. Fortunately, with the insurance, the real estate, all of that, my son and I have started a business. Yeah, he's 3. But nonetheless, my family is taken care of. We are okay. So then after that, the top of the pyramid is, taking care of others. So I want to do all that I can to convince as many people as possible that we do live in the best of all possible times. And especially in America, you can absolutely achieve anything it is that you want to with, by taking positive control of, your attitude and your identity, your skills that you are bringing to the table for the rest of society to weigh in on. By taking control of your time, we all have the same 24 hours. And, also by taking control of your network, and then just being incredibly disciplined and consistent. So, I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this because I want anything from you. I'm only doing this because I want to play a very small role and encouraging you to be able to achieve whatever it is that you're after. All of my mentors have played a phenomenal role in being that individual for me. So I'm just kind of trying to return the favor by leveraging things like YouTube and other platforms that have just this really broad audience that are constantly barraged by negative, untrue things. And then I would be lying, Chris, if I also didn't acknowledge the fact that YouTube just kind of pays you for putting videos up after you kind of prove yourself to putting quality content out. So it will turn into an income stream, not one that I need, but nonetheless, there is that to, think about.
Yeah, no, and I think that's good. And that allows you to continue to do what you want to do. And it's a benefit from that too. So that's awesome, man. Well, I thank you so much. I think that you're an incredible guy, one, and then for you to live out what you are talking about, it's refreshing. Instead of a lot of theoretical stuff, you have somebody who's in the midst of building something that I think is awesome. And I tease your brother sometimes about empire building, but I think that you guys are doing that, and just really appreciate your willingness to come on and talk. And is the best way, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, is just to check you out on YouTube? Just Google or YouTube search Ryan Ingram.
Oh yeah. If you're willing to subscribe to me, that would mean the world to me. I'm having 105 times more fun doing that channel than I expected.
That's awesome. Well, and yeah. I can't recommend it enough. I mean, he's got this Millionaire by 30 series, which is 10 videos that are awesome. That would be a paid course by I think virtually anyone else. And he just put out these videos for students that I was able to watch last night and this morning, because they're less than 24 hours old, and it's awesome. And not many people have the work ethic that Ryan Ingram has. So he has 55 videos now. I think that 2 months from now, he'll have 110 videos, or maybe even more than that. So it's awesome, dude. I really appreciate your time today, man. And thanks again. Okay. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right.